Welcome back. It is another week. And so, yeah, it's another week. We're going to do some more science. Hope you guys are doing well. We are going to be focusing in this week on something called natural selection. So let me see if I can find our slide here. Here is our agenda for the week. So in our notebook, which I have linked over here for you, the Unit 4 notebook, you're going to copy over slides 12 through 15 this week. I am kind of having trouble. I'm trying to use the same notebook for you guys and my face-to-face classes. So because I'm seeing my face-to-face classes every other day now, it's going to be kind of hard to tell you which row exactly and all of that kind of stuff because we're completing several rows a week at this point. So please go in, and when you open the different slides for your notes, there will be a Science Now question, and it will tell you like which slide and which row and that kind of stuff. So go through and do those. Our lesson this week is focusing in on natural selection, and we're also going to be comparing and contrasting this to something called artificial selection. So if we go over to your course in Schoology, here's what you've got this week. We're going to be working in this folder here called 4.3 and 4.4. And this has everything that you're going to need for the week. So first, if you need to copy slides, you need to edit this. So it says slides 12 through 15. We're going to copy over slides 12 through 15. Here are these slides for natural selection. These are also linked in the headings of your notebook as well, but they're here if you need them. Here is the lesson for your notes on 4.4. So the 4.3 lesson on natural selection is going to be on slides 12 through 13. And then your lesson 4.4 for artificial selection is going to be on slides 14 and 15. Your assignment this week that's going to kind of play off of this is called Natural Selection Practice. And when you go in, this document is going to have 3 parts to it. So the first part is there is a video link here in this document that is going to give you an example of natural selection in action. Then you've got some questions that you're going to be answering. I will be looking at this closely to see how are you processing this information and how are you doing in terms of your understanding of natural selection. So you want to make sure in your answers that you're giving detailed answers in complete sentences. The more information that you give me, the more you show me your understanding, the more points I'm going to be able to give you. So it's going to be asking you some different questions about conditions for natural selection and what's going on. And our first example here are these rock pocket mice. The second part of your practice this week is a simulation. And basically, you're going to be looking at natural selection in a population of bunnies. Now, this is a challenge, okay? So you're going to be playing around with this simulation, and you're going to have 3 different challenges. And so I'm just going to kind of show you the lay of the land here. According to our instructions, you're going to click on this link above. When we open this link, we're going to need to click on download and then open the simulator. I'm going to give you guys a heads up that there are a lot of things that you're going to be able to manipulate here. There's not really a way, an easy way for me to give you like a bunch of really specific steps and instructions, because a lot of this is just going to be you playing around with this and seeing what happens. But in order to give you a preview of this, I'll just kind of walk you through it. So when you open this link, you're going to need to click on download. It's going to ask you if you want to keep this file. Yes, we want to keep it. It's going to download the simulator here. And once it's downloaded, you will be able to open this up. It may take a second. And my computer is being very slow today. When you open up the simulator, then you will be able to manipulate a bunch of different factors. Okay, so it's saying that there's a current version. We're going to just go ahead and you can update but I'm going to go ahead and just run with it the way that it is. Here, this graph is basically going to show you what's going on with the number of rabbits in this population for each generation. You can add mutations. So you're going to basically be able to choose to add certain mutations and see what happens to that population. There may be times where if your bunnies don't have a chance to reproduce, they die. Or your population, all of the bunnies died. Keep in mind, we talked last week about reproduction types, and in order for a species to survive, it has to reproduce. Now, you have not gone through the natural selection lesson yet, but in nature, there are different factors that are going to create pressure on organisms or create, what can we say, competition. So, for instance, there are predators. So with rabbits, these predators can be wolves. There's competition for food. You can also play around with seeing like what's going to happen to the population. What would happen to this population of bunnies if there was no selection pressures like predators or having to search for food? You can also choose different environments. So we're just going to play around. Your first challenge here is how can you make more white bunnies? So when you go over to your simulator, where did it go? When you go over to your simulator, we're starting with these little white bunnies, and we're going to just start running this simulator. And we want to see there's no selection pressures right here. And so we want to see, you know, how can we make more bunnies? We need to actually reset this. I screwed this up. We need to reset because I didn't do this right. So over here, you'll see how you can add a friend. So if we add a friend, we'll see if we can make more white bunnies. Oh, here's more white bunnies. So we have no selection pressure here. And if we just keep letting the simulation run, the bunny population is going to increase exponentially. So we are now been successful at creating more white bunnies. So the next thing to do is, how can you make 20 brown bunnies? So you go back to your simulator here. We're going to reset. And then you can add a friend. We can also add a mutation in. So we want some brown bunnies. So maybe we should click on this mutation for brown fur. And here's a mutation coming. Now, you can actually play around here and see, in the presence of no environmental selection factors, what happens to this population of bunnies. And there is roughly 20 brown bunnies here. And if there were no selection factors at play, nothing to suppress this bunny population, pretty soon the world is going to be overrun with bunnies. So there's a couple of different things that can happen here. You can see that under certain conditions, maybe all your bunnies die in the population. And you can also see that in some situations, like where we don't have any selection factors, the bunnies may overrun the world. Okay, so from there, you've got some different challenges. So first, just start out by playing around. See what these different things do. Run this simulation, reset it, run the simulation, and see what happens when you add wolves into the mix. Oh no, all the bunnies died. And, see how can we even keep the bunnies alive? Just kind of play around, see what's going on. Your first challenge is going to be to figure out a way to make bunnies take over with brown fur. So is there a way to basically make all the bunnies in the population brown? You're going to play around with that. Then your next challenge is to figure out, is there a way to get a population of 200 bunnies when food is the selection factor? So in your simulation, you're going to click on food as the selection factor. Of course, you're going to reset before you do that, but you'll select food and then see what's going to go on with that population. Every generation, like when you level up to the next generation, there's going to be a vertical line that happens on this graph. And then that will also be showing you what the population is getting to. You're also going to, challenge number 3 is to see if you can find a way for bunnies to take over when the environment's in the Arctic. So think about, how could you make that happen? So a lot of this is exploratory, really like trial and error. You're experimenting, only it's just that you're doing this on a digital platform. There are 2 questions for you to answer at the end. So when we're running a simulation, this is useful for understanding how things work. Like, we can run the simulation for natural selection and kind of see how these processes work. But these models or simulations are not always going to be exact to the real world. And so I want you to think about ways that the simulation might differ from what happens in a real ecosystem. But I also do want you to think as well and explain, how does simulation model the process of natural selection? And then part 3, to wrap this up, you're going to be describing natural selection in your own words. So I want you to put this term, this idea of natural selection, into your own words. And then there are certain key vocabulary words that I want you to include. So in your answer, in your response, you should be thinking about including the word nature, selects, adaptations, and fitness. Okay. And I don't want you to Google this. I actually want you to really think about, how can you put natural selection, this idea, into your own words? By the time you've gone through the lesson and by the time you have gone through these practices, you should be able to do that. Hopefully, by the time you get through those, you'll have a good understanding of what natural selection is. You're going to be wrapping up this week with a look at artificial selection. And whereas natural selection is happening in the natural environment, artificial selection are basically changes that are going on that are human driven. So I think you'll find this really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you actually goes back to our lesson from last week. And one of the things that I had you guys do, we're going to look at plant reproduction. We finished up the week with plant reproduction. Plants are pretty stinking cool because a lot of plants can actually reproduce both asexually and sexually. But one of the things that we do a lot with our foods is that we term foods vegetables that are actually fruits. And so basically, one of the things that we need to keep in mind with plants is that anything that has a seed is actually a fruit. So there are a lot of things that we refer to as vegetables that are actually fruits, like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, pumpkins, green beans. So all of these things are actually fruits because they contain seeds. And as we learned in our lesson, in a flower, this female part of the plant, the ovary, is what contains the little ovules that will become plant seeds when they're fertilized. So this ovary, once these little eggs or ovules are fertilized within the ovary, this ovary develops into a fruit, and then these fertilized eggs will become seeds. So whenever you are eating a fruit, you're actually eating the ovary of a plant. And whenever you eat what is considered a vegetable, like a cucumber, you're actually eating a fruit. So the next time you get some fruits or vegetables from the grocery store, open them up and look for those seeds. Now, we have bred some plants to not have seeds because it's just nicer for us to eat them without their seeds, kind of like seedless grapes. Grapes are technically a fruit and they do technically have seeds, but we've bred grapes so that some varieties will be seedless so that we don't have to deal with picking the seeds out. But the next time you get like a cucumber or a tomato or something like that from the grocery store, cut that open and look for the seeds in it. And you will actually, that flesh of the cucumber, that flesh of the tomato is actually once was the ovary of a plant flower. So, for your question in the discussion today, I'd like to know what is your favorite fruit? And what surprised you in our lesson this week that could be linked to either sexual or asexual reproduction, something in those slides and lesson that surprised you, or something that surprised you in our plant reproduction lesson? So I look forward to hearing your responses and what you learned this past week. And I will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.